Ladies and gentlemen, Arrowhead have buffed the flame weapons, but it's not what you expect. Hello and welcome to the channel. What we're going to do is break down the patch notes. We're going to take a look at what the CEO has been saying about the game, and specifically about the game's difficulty. I think that's going to be super interesting. But I just wanted to show you guys this. This is the first game I played after the patch. It's on a lower difficulty because I'm just messing around with the flame weapons. But you can see this flamer still has the new visual, which looks absolutely horrific. It's still not penetrating through these enemies as I'm attacking them, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being a flamethrower. It doesn't engulf enemies. It doesn't feel great. It's terrible. And I hope Arrowhead can fix this. But while I've got you here about the flamers, I'll just quickly say what the flame buff is. I mean, it's more of a fix than a buff. But basically, you can now... They've fixed an issue where the flamethrower weapons bounce off energy shields, making them useless when firing within a shield generator relay. So, yeah, a bit of a buff, but it still doesn't fix any of the underlying issues with the flame weapons, and does beg the question, are Arrowhead okay with this? Because we know that the actual CEO isn't, and the CEO leads the studio. Whatever way you want to slice that, doesn't matter if within Arrowhead the CEO is more focused on maybe the business element rather than the game's development. He is still the studio head, and everything does reflect back on him. So let's break this down. So these are the patch notes that we've got today, and they basically fix a load of crashes. So you've got fixed crashes that would occur when you or another player selects a new weapon while on the ship, and fixed the crash when booting the game after saved monitor was disconnected. There are general weapon fixes and stratagem fixes, so the thermite grenades no longer make the orbital cannon objective incompletable. This will be if you spam the thermite grenades into the back of it for some reason, you could then not destroy it and then not update the objective. That's now been fixed. Mines can now be shot and blown up while near a dangerous object. Fixed the bug where flamethrower weapons bounce off energy shields, making them useless when firing within enemy, well, not enemy, but firing within shield generator relay domes, as we've covered. There's also social menu fixes, so even more social menu fixes. They don't really elaborate on that. Miscellaneous fixes, you've got general performance improvements, some pertaining to fighting large swarms of bots. Fixed a bug where evacuate high-value assets mission stops working when the host leaves, and fixed infinitely loading thumbnails on low texture quality settings. Now, this is where things get interesting, because I want to go over these known issues, because there's one which I guess relates to the laser rover, which means it is broken at the moment, so you can kind of abuse this if you want, which would be fun. You know, we like overpowered weapons. Arrowhead, hello, hello. Anyway, these are known issues, so the game may display an infinite loading screen if a player disconnects during the deployment cutscene. Players may not receive friend requests sent from another platform. Invite-only games created by a friend can still be seen on the galactic war map but cannot be joined. Conduct a geological survey mission may become incompletable if a player calls in seismic probe and immediately leaves the game or disconnects. Bile Titan sometimes does not take damage to the head. Enemies that bleed out do not progress personal orders and eradicate missions. Most weapons shoot below the crosshair when aiming down the sights. Chain link fences block flamethrowers fire. I mean, everything blocks flamethrowers fire at the moment, guys. Stratagem beam might attach itself to an enemy but will deploy to its original location. And here's the one. Guard dog rover does not overheat when firing continuously. It just keeps firing. The laser keeps firing. It's amazing. Players are able to pick up empty expendable, my god, weapons like the EAT-17 or the MLS-4X, which is super annoying. Reinforcement may not be available for players who join a game in progress. Wrong decal displayed for the B-27 Fortified Commando. We have a fix and plan to implement it soon, I guess, plan. Service technician on the ship cannot be interacted with. They complained that they were bothered too much and could not do their work efficiently. Okay, all right. So those are the patch notes. Obviously, no fix to flame weapons. None of the major issues that we've had have been resolved here. This is just a hot fix, basically. But I do want to take a look at what the CEO has been saying, because again, this does reveal a lot behind the scenes. So we're going to jump over to Discord and take a look at what the CEO has been saying, because this is awesome communication, and it does give you the sort of behind the scenes, I guess, thinking that the boss is actually thinking, right? So this is good to get behind that, see what he's thinking. And in some ways it can be a little bit weird, because as we'll break this down, you know, we'll see. But I want to show this first. So this is a user saying, what's your opinion on the flamer visual? Do you think the new effect is better or worse than pre-patched? And he actually responds to this and says, personal only. I don't speak for the studio, or doesn't speak for the studio. You do, because you're the CEO. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Insane comment, but whatever. I liked the older one. So what we've got here is the CEO going, actually, I like the older one. What's going on, guys? Now, this can cause some friction because you've got the CEO publicly saying, look, well, I guess publicly saying what we want him to say, which everybody who plays the game thinks, right? The old flame weapons were much better. They looked better with the particle stream that detonated. They looked like they're actually firing fluid rather than like a gas-operated flamethrower, which is what we've got now. But crucially, they went through enemies, they bathed enemies, they felt like a real flamethrower. It was awesome. We were getting a flamethrower war bond, we were looking forward to the primary flamer, and we're looking forward to the secondary flamer. But of course, they nerfed the shit out of them and just destroyed them for, I don't even know why. It's actually an insane reason. So on the one hand, the CEO agreeing with the community makes sense. You're going to win points for that because the community want to hear the boss say that. On the other hand, when you say things like, I don't speak for the studio, you do. And then the other issue is, who in the studio has made the flamethrower changes? They're not particularly going to be too happy with the big boss man saying their work's crap, which is effectively what's going on here. But the other issue as well is what's going on communication-wise. Is it so broken down within the studio that they don't even know what's being worked on? But another thing as well, and this is something I think we do need to realize, is in these corporate environments, the boss is not going to be involved. Like, the CEO will not be involved in balanced discussion meetings about Helldivers 2. Because this is the CEO of Arrowhead, and they do have more than Helldivers, but obviously Helldivers is a massive game. But he's not going to be involved in that. That's a bit too low level for him almost. So when he comes out and just starts commenting on the changes that his staff have implemented, doesn't really give them a feeling of, well, the boss is behind us, does it? It's a really weird and a really interesting one. But I think the takeaway from here is the CEO thinks the old one was better and wants that back. So what's going to happen? Is it going to come back? If it doesn't, then it kind of makes this guy look like he's a bit limp, shall we say. But if it does come back, then but maybe this puts pressure on them to bring it back, and maybe they don't. Anyway, it would be insane if they didn't, because it was such a better, it was just better before. So what an insane change it was. So this is really interesting. This is about the difficulty of the game and designing the game for different players, and the fact that Arrowhead have been making this game for like 7 or 8 years in a closed environment, and now it's opened up, it's exploded, and maybe what Arrowhead intended the game to be, because you see things thrown around like, oh, realism in Helldivers 2. Oh, look, you expend the remaining ammunition in a magazine when you reload. Realism, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah, but I don't think people are playing this game for realism. They're playing this game because it's over-the-top mass murder of aliens. It's a cooperative horde shooter, and we want overpowered weapons. But the devs seem to be still stuck in that old sort of thinking, which has pushed them through development of, hey, we actually want this to be sort of realistic, which sounds insane when you say it, but whatever. This comment, though, is great. So look at this. Appreciate you being active in the Discord. Saw your comments about how the game was conceived to be more of a military simulator than a run-and-gun type game, which is fair. However, does it matter what the initial intent was behind making the game, what the dev team wants to create, if the player base, the paying customers, wants something different? Has the dev team considered the game which players bought en masse and fell in love with at launch is vastly different than what is on offer now? What can be done about the promise of Johan in regards to saying no more aggressive nerfs when that's what we got with the fire changes? Lastly, have you as a team thought about the other game which is coming out in a month, which is pretty much shooting for the same audience and has the power of a popular IP behind it? Now that final comment is on Space Marine 2. I mean, I'm really gutted that I didn't get early access to Space Marine to play it, but you better believe I was trying to get that as well. Space Marine is one of my favourite games of all time, but Space Marine 2, cannot wait for it. But will it actually eat Helldivers 2's breakfast? I don't know. I think it'll affect the player base numbers a little bit, but it's not really offering what Helldivers 2 offers. Yeah, it's got a single-player campaign, Space Marine, and it does have multiplayer, and it does have some like replayable missions, but I don't think it's going to be as in-depth as what we've got with Helldivers, so I wouldn't be too worried about that if I was Helldivers 2. But anyway, it would be a kick up the arse, so yeah. This is what Shams comes in and says. So, again, this is a very honest comment. And this is what's good about Shams. He does tell you what he thinks, and this is great. Because you get to, again, see what the leader of the company is thinking. And he says this. This is it. This is where the rubber meets the road, and probably the biggest reason for many of our missteps. Brutally honest, this company hasn't released a game in 8 years. Last time, I'm sure there were many diverse voices, but nowhere near the same as today. So what happens when the game you release ends up catering to a much bigger, different audience than you intended? I don't have the answer. but it's being discussed like crazy. We want to make as many Helldiver players happy, of course, but we don't. But we know the 3-hour-a-week casual dads play differently and want different things than the 30 hours a week difficulty 9 or 10 crowd. We haven't figured this out, and it's really new territory for us. This is a huge topic, but to me it's important that we really tackle it and be more transparent with you on how it's done. So this, if you go to Arrowhead's website, it straight up says a game for everybody is a game for nobody. And I think what we're dealing with here is almost hard-headed. The developers are very hard-headed. They were building a game that was very specific. Light military sim elements, cooperative shooter, an evolution of the original Helldivers. That's what they were going for. That's what they built. That's what they delivered. But when you played Helldivers, did you think, oh, this is a realistic game? You didn't. You just were like, holy shit, look at the size of these explosions. Everyone's dropping 500-kilogram bombs thinking they're blowing everything up, but they weren't. Massive firepower, massive destruction of enemies. We felt incredibly strong. And then it started to happen. The railgun got nerfed. But the railgun was really strong, but it got nerfed. Okay, everyone was using the railgun at the higher levels. And we go through you could break this down. I'm not going to, so don't worry, but you can go through all of the changes where you see, yeah, there were some buffs, but there were nerfs. They were taken away from things that were perceived as being too good because too much of the community was using them. Instead of looking at reasons why they're using them and thinking, can't we apply that to other weapons? This is a problem, I think, with Arrowhead itself. They want Helldivers 2 to still be this almost like semi-realistic game where the weapons are okay, they're not super powerful, but you need to be tactical, you need to work out engagements, instead of how I think literally everybody is playing this game, which is, holy shit, take me to the biggest group of enemies, I am going to annihilate them. That's what players are doing. Now, at the higher levels, what happens is you generally don't want to fight the waves of spawns because you'll run out of ammunition or they'll just overwhelm you. You need to deal with them and keep moving. Do the objective, keep moving. And high-level players will do that. It's a marked difference if you play at lower levels. So if you're playing between, like, difficulties, I guess, 1 and 6, players generally just fight waves of enemies. And I've got to be honest, sometimes it's actually harder at those levels than it is even at level 10 and level 9 because the players the engagements are too long. But isn't that telling you, Arrowhead, your players want to actually fight the enemies? We want to use strong weapons. We want to wipe out waves of enemies. That doesn't really correlate with this whole mil-sim vibe they're kind of trying to go for. And I think this comment off Shams is actually basically alluding to the fact that they may be trying to change the internal direction of the game. This isn't a realistic game. It sounds insane to say this. This isn't a realistic game, and I'll die on this hill. Making Helldivers too realistic doesn't make sense. Having realistic elements does. The way the Eagle stratagems get dropped in, they're fantastic. They feel realistic. It feels awesome. That's great. A flamethrower bathing enemies and just destroying them all feels great. But when you go, actually, let's try and make this more realistic in the sense it is not going to go through targets. I still think a liquid flamethrower would go through targets, right? Because it would just saturate the area, but whatever. I guess a propane or a gas-operated flamethrower wouldn't do that. It's just going to hit the target in front of it, and that's kind of what they've done, and it's like, ugh, that doesn't feel great. That feels terrible. This is a major disconnect, I think, between the player base and what Arrowhead want to do. I'm going to be honestly glued to this to see what their next steps are. Will they come out and just start buffing weapons, or will they start trying to balance weapons again how they have been, which is sapping the fun out of the game? Because at the end of the day, we just want to annihilate massive amounts of enemies, and I don't think it matters if you are a dad who's playing for 3 hours a week or somebody who's playing for 30 hours a week. You still want the same thing. You still want to be in this game using massively powerful weapons, annihilating massive enemies, loads of enemies, feeling like a badass, because that's what this game is. It isn't a goddamn mil sim. All right, guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I've been Stylosa. You can follow me on everything. And do remember, I do have a mouse mat available. It is a Helldivers inspired one. And I know everyone's not really too hot on Helldivers at the moment, but there is a link in the video description below, and you can go and check that out. It's really good quality. I really, really like it. It's probably the best thing I own. It's so good. It's so custom as well. It's limited, so when they're sold, that's it. They're all gone. But yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll catch you lot on the next one. See you soon.